things are done, and the election of president, of course, this is something of national level concern and should not complement that of the French presidency of European Union Council. So that's my opinion, more or less.
Okay, Danny, do you think Macron has not changed this on purpose? Do you think it will be legitimate as a strategy?
I don't have much to say about this topic specifically. I think it could be a strategy. I mean, it definitely everything is in these matters, but yeah, I don't know. I don't have much to say about this topic really.
Okay. It's fine. I was just trying to balance the quantity of time each of you spend. So do you have anything else to say about this? Nacho?
Sorry, I was a little bit disconnected because I was receiving a call. Just to finish my time, you say.
Did you
Alex?
hear the
Alex, I didn't hear you.
Okay, yeah. Just to sum up, Macron didn't want to change of the presidential election, but normally presidents change them when they coincide. Since with the presidency of the European Union Council, of the Council of the European Union. So, do you think Macron did that on purpose, and do you think that's legitimate?
All right. In that case, in my opinion, I think that yes, is one opportunity that he tries to gain, but because of the context of the French presidential election, because of the main contender that is Marine Le Pen. Also, I have here, maybe Olivia can try to tell me if this is true or not, that Marine Le Pen tried to make a more moderate speech about the European Union, saying, I don't want to leave the European Union, I want to transform the European Union. And it's something that Macron tried to make like a speech of fear, of if you are going to vote to Marine Le Pen, France is going to lose all the advance that we have gained with the European Union. So maybe yes, it's quite an opportunity for Macron try to make that the 6 months of presidency also tries with the presidential elections. And maybe, I don't know the calendar, and maybe also the legislative election is in May, mainly.
Yes. So the first thing I would say is that it is not the first time that the French presidency of the Council of Europe overlaps the French presidential elections. It happened already. I think it was in the 80s, if I'm not mistaken. And I also, I think it happened before. There was no need to change it. And I believe that it would not be changed because the population would not accept it, most likely. There is, in France, people are usually having a strong opinion about this kind of, let's say, rules and established events. And if a president would want to change the dates, the population, you should expect a popular uprising, and especially from the members of society who are disappointed or who are just waiting for the end of the mandate of the president. So Macron surely knows that. And also, like you said, it might also be a good moment for him to be president candidate, but also president of the Council of Europe, because people have it in mind. It is more fresh that this is happening, and people can also reflect on what the European Union is bringing to France. And on the contrary, Marine Le Pen, like you said, she is having a more a lighter position towards the European Union. The party that she represents now and that she used to represent, also along with her father, have been from the beginning Eurosceptics. And from 2017 to this year, Marine Le Pen went from wanting to leave the EU and leaving also the Eurozone to accepting it, because she has probably understood that it will not happen. And maybe it would, but changing her as her speech, her position about it, and making it more moderate is allowing her to gain more votes, basically. That's the main reason why it doesn't. And so by saying that she wants to transform it, she's not being specific, but it doesn't mean that she will not try to detach France as much as possible from the European Union, to bring back autonomy. And her main point is also to make the French law again superior, or superior to the European law, and gain back autonomy, let's say.
I'm glad of all of you. I mean, you are bringing very valuable information to the debate, and the only thing is that we are going to change the topic, the rise of energy, because we have been an hour already with this one. And of course, this topic has been a very hot topic lately, has been gravely affecting some members, and does not seem to have a prompt end, because not only because of the Ukrainian war, because of the problem was here before the Ukrainian war. Reasons, I did my research. The reasons seem to be according to different sources. I can send you the links if you want, by the way, for you not to think like I invent. For example, the rise of the price of the energy prices since last year to have been related to weather anomalies, reducing the production of renewable energies. Also, the fact of lowering investment in carbon oil and nuclear power, making us more dependent on natural gas, which is not only expensive, oil must be imported. And of course, then, the Ukrainian war, we all know. These are several factors that the press has highlighted. It's not a personal opinion. It's one thing I'm mentioning. So I don't know, Olivia, did you have an introduction for this topic too, or?
Yes, I do. So first of all, I think that the points that you have made are absolutely right. I would like to introduce this topic with a little bit of context, but really also focus on what is sustaining this crisis at the moment. But first, we have to bear in mind that there were, like you said, unfavorable climate conditions, but also the COVID-19 pandemic has had a huge impact on the energy crisis, because it led to a drop in the energy demand and the corresponding oil and gas production, for instance. And so the OPEC countries, the largest producers of petrol, have been also very slow to come back on the market and provide for the demand recovery and go back to the new normal, which led to a global supply chain, basically. And so the energy crisis, in the words that you have described it, plus the COVID-19 impact, led obviously to a price increase. And in the context of the Russian aggression on Ukraine, the situation is only going to worsen, especially when we take into consideration the sanction packages released by the European Union against Russia, but also the fear of retaliation from Moscow is a big is a big point. There is a fear that Russia could cut, for instance, of its supply, the most dependent countries such as Slovakia. And it brings to the table the fact that the European Union has to rethink the entire structure of its energy market. As we have mentioned before, we have to diversify our sources of supply. And it's going to be a complicated matter because replacing Russian gas is expensive, and other suppliers such as Morocco are at full capacity. And the European Union has to deal proactively with these challenges, and it should be a top priority, especially if it wants to sustain on the long term sanctions against Russia. And it's going to be a difficult political, environmental, and also social choice. So in short, the European Union has to embrace a continent-wide strategy and align on the same position and assess the vulnerabilities of its members, the local companies, and the dependency on Russia for energy to be able to step up the part of the energy crisis that is coming from there. And European leaders have to know that Moscow is going to try to fragment the Union on this matter, especially because of their response to their invasion of Russia. And so they must articulate a coherent answer to Putin's divide and rule strategy and just the energy crisis with an environmental response.
Great, thank you. For example, one very important thing I was going to ask to the other participants was how to confront the problem now. And one question from this was, should we confront this nationally or at a EU level? I guess we will all agree on this, but anyway, I wanted to know your the opinion of all of you. And I don't know if Nacho is here, but you can go. Oh, yeah.
Alex, I didn't hear you anything until you say Cicero's name.
Okay. Yeah, I was. You heard it, yeah, but not me.
So Ignacio, if you heard my point,
the internet connection is going terribly.
Yes, I hear your point, Olivia.
So what is your opinion? Would you like to
okay, and
well, thanks for the introduction because of the problems of the internet. In my case, yes, I think that, for example, to talk about the rise of prices is difficult to only see in one point. Climate is one factor. COVID is one factor, and also depends in the situation and the energy market of every country. But for example, Ukraine, the Ukraine situation and the Russian gas may have a main answer in some countries. For example, in Germany, that depends. I think that more of the 30% of the gas that Germany needs comes from, for example, from Russia. And also is maybe make a debate about the country that, for example, in the Eurostat inflation informed for March, for example, Spain, that we not depend a lot of the Russian gas. We are one of the countries that our electricity bills has quite a lot. Making a little observation with other countries, for example, France is more or less below the media in the European Union. Austria is also, and Sweden. And trying to make an answer, I found a video of a Spanish professor that now is in the European Parliament. It's called Luis Garicano. Try to analyze that mostly this country may have renewable resources, nuclear resources, or even Sweden that is more or less the middle way. 50 and 50 nearly. So it maybe try to make a point that for the European Union we try to advance in both sides, nuclear and renewable sources. But for example, a lot of countries, because of their government's party, Germany with the Greens, Spain with the Socialist Party and the Left Party Podemos, it's a debate that for the nuclear is not quite accepted actually. That is more or less my point. So it's difficult to try. It's mainly preferred to make a common answer for all the European countries, but it's quite difficult to reach it.
Yeah, in fact, I was going to later, if you want, we can introduce the energy, because of course France is quite involved with nuclear power, and the debate on that is, especially since Fukushima, for example, affected a lot, depends on gas, etc. So that's a main topic now.
Yeah, as you said, it was something that did not come, especially due to the war. So the Russia and Ukraine, of course, it has affected, but it's not the main factor. And it started also with the pandemic. So we have also seen that during 2020, we have had, and during the lockdowns, we have had a low demand for the resources in general, and so also the prices were more or less stable, let's say. But during 2021, when we had this kind of economic recovery and the high demand of the resources, of course, also the prices went high, and one of these cases was Germany, for example, if we want to talk especially for one country. And also to respond to your question, Alex, that you made, I think that states and countries should not work individually in solving these problems, because I'm not speaking only to show the unity of European Union, the shared values and everything. So this should be the basis of the problem solving at this point. But I'm afraid that the European Union as a whole, in general, as a region, is going to need also the help of the countries who are not part of the European Union yet. Because, as I have stated also in other debates, different countries have different resources, natural resources. They have also different agreements with China, for example. They have different agreements with India, with Australia. China, India, and Australia. China, Australia, and the US, have been hit by different economic conditions, bad economic conditions that were not dependent on them. So, and of course, this has brought a shortage of the supply side also for the European Union. So I think that to respond to your question is that European Union has to work as a unity to resolve this problem. Of course, it will help. It will have the need of other countries who are not part of the European Union because of this independent natural resources that will be, some countries will be the providers and some others will be the receivers. And another key point that I wanted to stress, that Olivia also mentioned in her introduction, was the weather conditions. So this is something that is not dependent on the countries. It does not depend on the policy. Of course, we can think about the climate change and everything, but it happens that in a certain moment, in a certain period, we can have also weather conditions that are not like dependent on us, and we cannot very well manage them. And also I want also to emphasize that the key drivers of energy market dynamics over the coming months also will be the severity of the Northern Hemisphere winter. So the severity that this season is going to have on the countries, and how the countries will be able to, or the stories that they have of the natural resources, especially the gas and the coal, hard coal. I can also mention the Rotterdam coal, for example, that is more special as a hard coal that they have in their available in their natural resources, let us say in that. And of course, the prices of both natural gas and electricity will fluctuate in Europe, also depending on temperatures, wind output, and many other factors. So the weather conditions will affect the markets from both the demand and supply side. So it will not be only the European Union which will be affected, but also the providers of these resources. And so I think that they should cooperate between them and find a middle way in providing the resources, and also when they receive the resources from the suppliers, to know and to implement the right policies how to manage this resources for the citizens, of course.
Thank you so much, Thieno. In fact, I love a work from Pedro Baños, which is a geostrategist from Spain. He is not, of course, implying that he's in favor of dictatorships or anything like that. But he says that countries like China has an advantage in the sense of their political stability, in the way of being able to do big long-term unified plans. I think that will be very, and that the need for that is incredibly huge for the European Union. We should try to create a common ground for that kind of plans, because the World Bank, I mean, the difficulties we are having, and the potential difficulties that will come in demand that. So yeah, Daniel, would you think about this, or about what do you know about the French nuclear energy, which I know you a little bit. You did your research on that, so.
Well, I wanted to talk about I wanted to answer the question of either working independently or working together. Of course, I favor working together. All the countries of the European Union, but I think it's also important to, like, for the different, let's say, political areas to talk to each other, not only between countries, but also within a country. I'll explain myself better now. Germany, for example, when the disaster in Fukushima happened, so basically the people were afraid of nuclear energy, and so they spoke against it, and that kind of led to Germany depending on way more than it should on Russian gas. And I think maybe that was not, maybe it should have been important to make both sides of to speak, one of the sides being the energy and economy side, and the other side being the geostrategic part of politics. And I think that may not have been the case, and people may have been moved to way too much by the flashy, let's say, very visual aspects of a nuclear disaster. And so, yeah, that on one hand, and on the other hand, I think that probably, I'm in favor of nuclear energy, but maybe now, as a reaction to the thing happening in Ukraine, it's not the most, let's say, the most efficient and the fastest way to solve the problem. And so probably the best thing now would be to shift to other countries and buy them their natural gas, and in the long term maybe reactivate nuclear power plants and updating old power plants or building more nuclear power plants. And I've seen that France actually is doing that. Like they are actually very big on nuclear power, and they're planning on building more. And I'm really in favor of that. Basically because it's less polluting than obviously coal and oil, but also less polluting than natural gas, and it's way more efficient than these other sources. And I think that would also, like, together with renewable sources, it could add the stability and independence that Europe needs now more than ever. And I've recently read this news. Well, it's kind of like, I'm digressing, but anyways, the Germany reactivated recently coal power plants, in this war situation. So I think that's a pretty good sign of how actually green policy, going against nuclear power plants because they might cause some sort of issue, which is not the case necessarily, and probably isn't, may actually lead to depending more on very polluting sources of energy like coal in this case. And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much everything I had to say.
Okay, thank you. Yes?
Yes, Alex, if you didn't want to add anything else, I just, I had a short comment on the French nuclear power, because it is something that as far as I have also read about this topic, and as far as I know, it's something that does not depend on the resources that France has available now. So they have no oil, no gas, and the quantity of the coal is limited and poor for France. So they have relied themselves on these nuclear power plants, and because it is quite resolvable for them to use this kind of nuclear energy, because the basis of the function of this kind of energy is the uranium, and some pounds of fissionable uranium would be sufficient for France, of course, to run a big city for a year with electricity or with power in general. So that was what I actually read a little bit here in online, and then that I wanted to share. But of course, I would also be curious to know about it more, because France, being in an area, in a geographic area, and one of the big countries of Europe, does have to rely only on this, because I remember that Macron has said that they will build other 6 more nuclear power plants to support the energy provision. And but yeah, as I said, I stay to the opinion that what nature has given to you and the nature of the resources that you have, you cannot change. You can manage them, but you cannot change. You cannot like modify the quantity, except unless you rely on the agreements with different countries that have the possibility to provide this resources. But yeah, it seems like quite resolvable, and I don't know if I have to say it's like less polluting for the environment, but yeah, I would think so. So I don't want to change the opinion about that. Let me think that it's also good for the environment in general. So.
Thank you. Nacho?
Yes. In my case, for the nuclear energy, I have some points that could be quite interesting. Is because, for example, 2 of the most against opinion about nuclear energy, in some countries, for example, the security matters because of Fukushima, for example, is one of the main reasons why Germany, with the government and Merkel, and then with the new government Scholz with the Greens, is trying to retry it from there, is the security matters. And for example, there's some new studies that now with more investment, the security matters are more secure, or try to prevent more the damage. And also the second source of fear in the nuclear energy is the radiation, because of the nuclear fission provokes these radiation effects. And for example, I don't know if people from here know about the ITER project. It's an international project the European Union is in, the United States in, and they want to consecute nuclear fusion and try, instead of radiation, create an area of hydrogen. So there will be no problem of radiation in that case. I think that, for example, the location of the main venue is in Kadash in France, because of the logistics and all the buildings that they have.
Oh, great. I hadn't heard. For example, I think you mentioned nuclear fusion.
Yes.
The internet was going a bit bad. I think you mentioned it. Yeah. The bad thing about that, from what I know, is that still decades for that to work. Unfortunately, there are several like relatively frequently we have pieces of news breakthrough, but it's I mean, serious science is it's decades for we to be able to use that. But hydrogen is a very good yeah, the only like how to say, the only subproduct from it is water vapor, so that's great. Steam. Daniel?
Yes. Yeah, I wanted to add some information on French nuclear power plants, because I've been like researching about it. Compared to I'm going to respond to Cilleno about why France also uses nuclear power plants, because they also have better technology compared to other nuclear power plants. So the French nuclear power plants have a sort of new generation technology that allows them to reuse the subproducts of the fission to generate more energy again. And so that means that the subproducts have less and less radiation, making it more environmentally friendly in the end. And that could be I think that's a very good avenue to make nuclear energy more environmentally friendly than it already is, I think.
Cilleno?
Yes, I'm very sorry, Alex, because I think I'm becoming a communist, not giving you the speech or the right of speech. But yeah, it was something that. Thank you, Daniel, for your answer. And I was thinking about that because having no resources on oil, gas, and especially on coal, France lets me think that this is the only way, and this is the only reason why do they have to rely on the power plants. Of course, one of the attack, and so it was like the uranium in itself as an element is however, it was a liquid uranium that can also be used for the explosive equipments or the terrorist attacks. But I don't want to change the topic, so this is another thing that was the reason why I was thinking about the environment. But yeah, I at the end I think that the might be the only way for France to rely on the provision of energy. Of course, this is not negative. This can be positive also for other countries to be followed as an example, and also to. If this gives also positive effects on the environment, of course, other countries will be beneficial to support this kind of policy, and also to follow this kind of policy. And that was more or less the point. Thank you, Alex, And now I give you the floor to express your opinion.
It's fine. It's fine. Yeah. In fact, I will just a brief thing and then give the floor to Olivia, who just wants to add. Yeah, I wanted to tell you a curious fact that I learned the other day, and a little opinion about that. They have made like a meta-analysis in making like account. They have counted the quantity of deaths of different kinds of sources of energy, because one of the main points of the nuclear energy is the risk that it has for human life. But it's quite interesting that historically, taking into account all the history data that we now have in the world in general, taking into account, of course, Fukushima and Chernobyl and all those accidents. The production of these consequences of production of oil and gas and the use of them, etc., many more deaths, for example, because of respiratory diseases or the environmental accidents that have also happened with those production or extraction of those sources, etc. So that's quite interesting. It's quite interesting. You can even make a comparison, and this was my with planes and with the risk of planes and cars. Cars have car accidents caused may have like at much 4 victims, for example, but of course a plane crash is much worse. But the difference is that a plane crash is very, very, very less frequent. So the total probability of dying in a car accident is far less than the probability far less from the probability of dying in a plane crash. So I think this is a good comparison, because nuclear energy is like plane crashes. It's much more like visceral, and it makes a bigger impact on people when it happened. But the overall probability of dying because of that is much lower. So I wanted to think about that. Yeah, Olivia, and then Danny, who has raised his hand.
Thank you. I agree with your point about the safety of nuclear plants. It is obvious that there are less chances of accidents, of whether they be technical or human created. However, even if the nuclear power plants are emitting very low carbon dioxide, and for that reason are considered as not so polluting, they are, in my opinion, not a sustainable source of energy, and it cannot be considered as a green one because of the nuclear waste that comes from it. It is extremely dangerous, and we have currently no way to deal with it. And this waste is just stored in nuclear waste pools or buried underground, because we have no way to deal with the problem. And this doesn't seem to me like a proper way for the European Union and nations such as France, who are usually setting the trend worldwide, to deal with green transition and the future of energy. Of course, it is, in a situation like the one we have currently, a good way to palliate to shortages and a good backup, let's say, but it is not a proper solution. And there are the example of the consequences of the of the accident in Fukushima and the rise in atmospheric pollution in Germany is really striking, because there are graphs that could show you indeed that after that, let's say, to exaggerate, earthquakes in Japan are causing a rise in atmospheric pollution in Germany. And you have very well explained what was the logic behind that. So yes, of course, nuclear power plants are safer because of the low risk of accidents, but down the line, we do not know how to deal with the waste, and we cannot say if it won't destroy the earth or also have more direct consequences on our agriculture or our health, for instance. So the European Union and countries worldwide should just continue to find better solutions if the traditional renewable energy sources are not satisfactory enough. It should be then, the priority should then be to encourage research and innovation to find proper renewable energies that will make a difference.
Thank you, Olivia. I love that. I love question also because it brings dissent to the opinions here. So that's great for a healthy debate. I mean, I know most of people here are in favor of nuclear energy, so maybe we can have a healthy discussion on that. Daniel?
Yeah, I do agree with what Olivia said about progressing to better source of energy, and I think in the distant future, maybe not nuclear, but fusion within the as a type of nuclear power could be very good and very clean. What you said about nuclear waste is true. Like so far, until very recently, what nuclear power plants did was store that nuclear waste in like very protective storage devices and put it underground, and that, if not taken care of properly, could lead to earth pollution, of course, land pollution. That said, the new technology I was telling Tilleno about before actually kind of fixes that problem, in the sense that being able to reuse the nuclear waste to generate more energy makes it less radioactive, and so it decays way faster, and there's like a way lower chance of radioactive pollution. And even in the case of having that kind of pollution, it's very weak and it decays fast the more you reuse it. And that's actually very interesting for the case of more modern nuclear power plants, like the French ones. Maybe not as much as for the Spanish ones, because we don't have that technology. And so as far as I know, the plans are to build these storage buildings where the nuclear waste can be put in and then sold to nuclear power plants that have the technology to reuse them. And in that case, that could be much better than just keeping it underground. And that could be some sort of intermediate solution to using nuclear power, but not like just leaving the waste somewhere underground. And talking about what Alejandro mentioned regarding the causes, the amount of people dying related to the use, like the energy sources. I also have to mention the greenhouse emissions related to the energy sources. So for every gigawatt per hour, nuclear energy produces 3 tons of CO2 equivalent, so greenhouse gas emissions, whereas other sources like natural gas need 490 tons. So that's like more than 100 times what nuclear energy produces. And it's comparable even to the amount of tons that wind energy or solar energy produce. And so I think that's something to take into account in regards to the greenhouse gas emissions. Of course, this radiation part, and as long as that is controlled, and as long as there are like the security protocols necessary to control where the nuclear waste is stored, how uranium is processed, and where it's put, I think that could be a good way to stabilize the energy problem that we're having now. And yeah, I just think in the case of nuclear energy, there's a similar thing to what Alejandro mentioned with a probability of dying in cars and dying in a plane crash. I think it's more of a psychological effect that big destructive events have on us. So more and more people, like thousands of people die because of smoking cigars, but nobody has that, let's say, motivation to like actually ban them or like get them away from people. But in the case of nuclear energy, or in the case of other things that are more, they have these narratives around them. They have these, there's uranium, and uranium is thought as like a very dangerous, explosive, very scary thing. I think if actually 1 in every million cigars actually exploded in your face and like completely destroyed your head, I think that would motivate more people to actually stop smoking than actually the fact that it's killing you very slowly. And I think that may be what's happening with nuclear energy. And that's pretty much everything I have to say.
I guess so. Thank you so much. I want to end here. Sienna, you can say like 30-ish, but we already have taken into account also that, and I want to thank you so much. Huh?
It was just a question to Olivia, so if I may just to conclude on that,
okay, great. We can conclude with that. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'm going briefly, so thank you. Well, also to make, Olivia, a connection between this topic and the topic that we were discussing before, the French presidency. So the French presidency, one of the priorities that they have made is this kind of the environmental friendly policies and the carbon nuclear by 2050 of European Union. So, but this is something that has been also discussed in the Green Deal agreements and various agreements that have European Union has made previously. But now that we have this kind of rising of the prices of the natural resources, the gas, the coal and oil, but also the petroleum. It has also been a rise of prices in the petroleum. And I wanted to link it to the one of the priorities of French presidency, which is the defense priority. So also France and Germany together were thinking about making these future tanks and the flight jets. On the other hand, I was thinking about the rising of the prices and also the needs of the citizens, because as you said, also in the weather conditions, the northern hemisphere winter, for example, the severity that it will bring to the citizens depends also will define also the amount of the resources that will be used. So having in mind on one hand the citizens' needs for to use this kind of resources. Also the economic hit by the pandemic, that many people lost their jobs and now the economic situation is not that good. And on the other hand, the French presidency of this kind of defense, the investment on military and flight jets and future tanks, which do you think should be, of course, the citizens' needs should be the priority of the French presidency. But let me ask the question in another way. Do you think that this is a contradiction, that now with the pandemic almost over and the rising of the prices, not only from Russia, but as we have mentioned, the rising of prices came early. Is this a kind of contradiction for French presidency to think about the investments in military when, on the other hand, we have the citizens' needs to use the resources, and also the wages, of course, the economic situation that is a little bit hard?
Thank you for this question. It's very complex, but I would say that the needs of the citizens at this moment is protection more than ever, because we're being challenged at the frontier of the European Union, and it is proving that there is a need to invest in defense, because we need it, because we are never ready. We better be ready than sorry, and their aggression on Ukraine by Russia is proof that there is a critical need for the European Union to have a common defense, and if not, to use it for itself, to be able to help, as the Article 42 of the treaty of, I don't remember exactly which one, so I won't state it. There is an article in European law that states that we are also able to provide finance or eventually provide weapons to neighboring country to provide help and assistance in case of aggression.
Yes, but Russia has not shown that they have a problem with European Union. So for 8 years they have the problem with Ukraine. So we can admit that the war might have been somehow predicted, because there has been this kind of tension of 8 years between Russia and Ukraine. And so, of course, also the European Union had to be prepared on the knowing that the Russian pipeline was one of the main providers of the gas. So they had to be prepared about the resources, about the energy, and to make a plan about this, because the war was at stake. And so, on the other hand, Putin has not shown that he has a problem with NATO. He has a problem with the European Union. His only problem is with Ukraine. So, from the defense side, the protection, the military investments, I think that it is unnecessary to think about the fighter jets, future tanks, weapons, and everything when we have probably the winter will be very severe, and people will not be able to pay for the gas, for the oil, and everything. So it's something that Russia is innocent at this point, because they have not shown any problem with the European Union. Like, well, they might dislike the European Union, of course, but they have not shown any problem on that.
Do you think really that Russia is innocent and means the European Union no ill? Because they are the largest producer of grain in Europe, as well as Ukraine. They both countries we depend on these two countries for grain and obviously for gas. And so by attacking Ukraine, he's putting also in danger the whole European Union. He might not be directly shooting our citizens, but he's threatening our well-being. And there is no immediate solution to the rising prices of gas, because say that tomorrow we decide to drop buying gas from Russia, we have to bring it from somewhere else, and that's going to be, for instance, Saudi Arabia or the United States, and it won't be cheaper because it's much further, and we also don't have necessarily infrastructures, the terminals, the liquefaction stations. And so down the line, the result for the citizens will be the same. They will still pay the high price. So now the only chance that we have is that spring is arriving, although, the temperatures continue to drop every day randomly. But with the end of winter, we have the opportunity to prepare for the forthcoming winter. But I strongly disagree with the fact that Russia is not also threatening us. And Russia is one potential aggressor with a dictator who is clearly a lunatic, So if ever NATO, European Union, or the United States will make a wrong step, he could decide to also attack us. But of course, this would be a really bold move, because we all have deterrence and nuclear power, and that would assure mutual destruction. So, in short, with defense, the interests of the citizens are also at stake, because we are also not covered. We would be also covered because threats might not only come from Russia, and also with having such equipment, we would be able to provide support to the EU neighboring countries, which are part of our economic and military support.
Well, it is important not to leave people to be cold in winter. That's you just have to find an option for that. But since our dictator Alex told us to stop here, I'm not going anymore on that.
Yeah, not only dictator, but also the protector of Olivia's stomach, because she really needs to have dinner. I mean, in the French dinner timetable is quite different from the south. So I thank her so much. Or no, I thank her so much for attending the debate and for waiting more us, and thank you all for coming too. It was a huge pleasure. Thank you, Nacho. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Sienna, as always. Of course. Yeah. So I have a lot of other notes here to tell, but there's always more things to say about this. So thank you so much to all of you, and see you in the next Beta Debates.
Thank you so much, guys.
And yeah.
Thank you. Have a good night and a good weekend too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.